I found a wedding invitation with my fiance's name on it. They say love reveals itself in the smallest details or in the most painful discoveries. 2 months before her dream wedding, Emma stumbled upon a piece of paper that didn't just break her heart. It shattered her entire sense of reality. It was supposed to be another ordinary Monday morning. The kind of morning filled with soft light streaming through cream-colored curtains, the scent of coffee drifting through the air, and the comforting certainty that life was moving exactly as planned. But fate has a strange way of hiding life's hardest lessons in moments of calm. That morning, Emma opened the mailbox outside her small suburban apartment. Inside were the usual things bills, a flyer for a new cafe, and a thick white envelope addressed in elegant gold letters. It looked like a wedding invitation. Out of mild curiosity, she turned it over and froze. The name on the envelope wasn't hers, but it carried her fiance's name, perfectly spelled out. It read, "Daniel Miller and Olivia Thompson invite you to celebrate their wedding." For a few long seconds, the world stood still. The sound of cars, birds, wind, everything faded away into silence. Her heart didn't just sink. It felt as though it had been trapped between disbelief and dread. In the weeks leading up to that morning, Emma had been finalizing her own wedding plans. She and Daniel were supposed to get married in just 2 months. They had chosen the venue by the lake, the floral arrangements, even the cake flavors. Emma had spent sleepless nights designing every tiny detail to perfection. Yet here, in her trembling hands, was an invitation for another wedding. A wedding that claimed her groom was marrying someone else. She stood there for minutes, just staring at the golden letters as the morning breeze caught the edge of the paper. There was no mistake. It was Daniel's name, and Olivia. Emma recognized that name too. Olivia had once been Daniel's coworker, an interior designer with a bright laugh and a kind of charm that made everyone notice her. Emma had met her once at a company event where Daniel had introduced her casually. She remembered the way Olivia had looked at him too warmly, too fondly, and how Daniel had quickly changed the subject. But Emma, secure in her trust, had brushed it aside. Love, she believed, was built on faith. Now that belief was trembling. Emma walked back into her apartment, her hands cold. She placed the invitation on her kitchen table and stared at it as if staring could change the words written on it. Her mind couldn't stop racing. Every shared laugh, every promise, every "I love you," whispered across late-night phone calls, now sounded like fragile lies trying to hold themselves together. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe someone printed the wrong name. Maybe there was another, Daniel Miller. It was a common name, after all. But the address printed in the invitation matched the same city where they both lived. The date, eerily, was just 3 weeks before their wedding date. The air suddenly felt heavy. All that day, Emma couldn't focus. She kept replaying their months of engagement in her head, how Daniel had seemed distracted lately, how he'd canceled dinner plans twice in 1 week, how he'd started taking phone calls in another room. Each little thing that once felt harmless now looked suspicious under the harsh light of doubt. That night, she didn't confront him immediately. Instead, she wanted to observe, to see if the man she loved would lead her closer to the truth or deeper into denial. When Daniel came over that evening, everything about him looked the same. The soft eyes, the easy smile, the way he ran his hand through his hair when speaking. But beneath his calm face, Emma saw flickers of something different distance. He kissed her cheek, asked how her day had been, and settled on the couch while scrolling through his phone, as if their lives weren't about to unravel. Emma sat across from him, her heart pounding. She wanted to scream, to ask him why, to wave the invitation in his face. But instead, she watched him pretend that everything was fine. The truth, she decided, would reveal itself in time. Days turned into nights that felt longer than usual, and with each passing day, Her need for answers grew. Emma began noticing small, seemingly insignificant changes. Daniel's cologne smelled different one day, subtler, more refined, the kind Olivia used to recommend during office parties. He began leaving early for work meetings that went later and later into the evening. His phone was now constantly face down. When she reached for it one night, he quickly took it away, laughing off her curiosity. But love doesn't erase intuition. It only delays confrontation. A week later, Emma decided to find out the truth. She took the invitation again, studied the venue address, and made a silent decision. The wedding mentioned in the invitation was set for a Saturday afternoon. She told Daniel she would be spending that weekend with her cousin out of town, a lie she never thought she would tell. But sometimes lies are born from the need to survive. That Saturday, she drove alone to the address printed on the card. It was a small coastal town 2 hours away. As she neared the venue, she could see white chairs arranged in neat rows, flowers lining a seaside cliff, and soft music playing from speakers. Guests dressed in pastel colors chatted, laughed, posed for photos. For a moment, she wanted to believe it wasn't real, that she would step out of her car and realize this was some twisted misunderstanding. But then she saw him, Daniel, standing there, in a crisp gray suit, smiling at the woman in white beside him, Olivia. Her world collapsed in silence. Emma didn't get out of the car. She couldn't. She just sat there, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles went white, watching the man she was supposed to marry stand next to another woman, looking every bit the image of love and commitment. It wasn't a movie scene. There was no background music, no dramatic revelation, just raw pain wrapped in sunlight. She stayed until they exchanged vows. She couldn't hear the words, but she saw Daniel's movements, how he held Olivia's hands, how genuinely he smiled when the officiant spoke. There was nothing hesitant about him. He didn't look like a man living two lives. He looked like a man fully devoted to one. And that realization hurt even more than betrayal itself. She drove away before they said, "I do." The road ahead blurred through her tears. She didn't remember the journey home, only that by the time she arrived, the sun had already set, and the sky was painted in purples and golds that mocked her heartbreak. In the quiet of her apartment, she broke down completely, not just from betrayal, but from the death of a dream. The person she had built her future around no longer existed. That night, she thought about all the ways she could respond. Call him out publicly. Call Olivia. Post the truth online. But each option only made her feel emptier. Revenge would not restore what she had lost. Instead, she decided on something else. Something quieter, stronger. Freedom. When Daniel finally called that evening, Emma didn't answer. She didn't even listen to his voicemail. The next morning, she packed his things from her apartment, every photo, every sweatshirt, every memory, and placed them neatly in a box by the door. He came by 2 days later. His calm composure faltered when he saw the box. He started fumbling for words, excuses about misunderstandings, and situations he couldn't explain. But Emma didn't need explanations. The truth was visible in how his eyes shifted away from hers. She listened quietly, not to his words, but to the sound of her own heart hardening into resolve. When he finished, she simply said, "Leave." And this time, he did. In the days that followed, Emma felt both empty and alive. Grief and peace often walk hand in hand after loss. The world didn't stop for her pain, but it also didn't seem as harsh anymore. She began finding small joys again, morning walks, journaling her thoughts, painting by her window. Each day, she learned that betrayal doesn't define you. Recovery does. She also understood that sometimes losing the wrong person is the only way to make space for your own growth. Months later, she received another invitation. This time, it was from her best friend, inviting her to a simple backyard wedding. She hesitated at first, fearing the memories that might resurface. But she went. As she watched the couple exchange vows beneath strings of golden lights, she didn't feel anger anymore. Instead, she felt something deeper gratitude. Because love, she realized, isn't about possession or control. It's about truth. And truth, even when painful, sets you free. Looking back, Emma understood that her story wasn't one of betrayal, it was one of rebirth. She had learned that sometimes the universe exposes lies not to break you, but to return you to yourself, to remind you that love begins with self-respect. There are people who will promise you forever while building a future behind your back. But there are also moments in life that quietly whisper, "You deserve better." And that whisper becomes your strength. Daniel eventually tried to reach out months later, sending apologies filled with memories and regret. But Emma no longer felt hatred or longing, only closure. Some endings, she realized, don't need confrontation. They only need distance. In a quiet moment one evening, she took that first invitation, the one that had once shattered her world, and burned it in her backyard. As the paper turned to ash, she felt something inside her finally let go. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need answers. She needed peace. And peace, at last, found her. This story reminds us that heartbreak isn't the end. It's the awakening of truth. That sometimes love doesn't fail us. It reveals what we've been blind to. The people we trust most can betray us, but what defines us is what we do next. Would you have confronted him that day, or walked away like Emma did? This story reminds us that real love starts with self-respect, even when it means walking alone. But I want to hear from you. If you discovered your partner living a double life, would you expose them or choose peace and leave in silence?